Live from Johannesburg, this is Tonight with Jane Dutton. 17 billion rands owed to Eskom by municipalities. 15 billion of this just for Soweto residents. But is there another side to this story? And then a difficult legal week for economic freedom fighters. As court orders against the party continue to pile up, what's the party's fight back plan? This is Tonight with Jane Dutton. Now, power cuts are one of the most unwelcome inconveniences. But Eskom has stepped up interruptions to municipalities that owe it billions. But is there a case for Eskom to also look at how it does things? And is the EFF falling too much on the wrong side of the law? Well, the number of court orders against the party is going up. Do these threaten to make the EFF look like careless, loose cannons? Well, those are my questions for my guests tonight. What are yours? You can call us on 011 759 6340, 011 759 6340. You can also use the hashtag Tonight with Jane Dutton. But first, Shahan with the news.
Thanks, Vuyo. Appreciate it. Our top stories tonight. Opposition parties, NGOs and analysts say amending the constitution for land expropriation without compensation may further polarize an already divided country. Agri-SA says it's disappointed that Parliament's Constitutional Review Committee has decided to adopt a final report to amend Section 25 of the Constitution. It believes this is not the right move and will badly affect the economy.
We've also been having talks with the ruling party, with all stakeholders. We had a land summit where we proposed alternatives. We have cautioned throughout this process about the possible implications for our sector, for food security and for the economy. So we are very disappointed that despite that, we have this outcome, because we honestly do not believe that Section 25 and the requirement for compensation is an impediment to land reform. There are lots of other things that need to be addressed that is slowing land reform down and causing it not to be sustainable, but it's not the requirement for compensation in the Constitution.
Malusi Gigaba has resigned as a Member of Parliament. It comes 2 days after he quit as Home Affairs Minister. Gigaba faced growing pressure to quit after Public Protector Busisiwe Mkhwebane found him guilty of violating the Constitution in the Fireblade Terminal saga. The ANC in Parliament is praising him for putting the party first. The move also means he no longer has to answer to the Ethics Committee for violating the Executive Ethics Code. Interviews for the head of the National Prosecuting Authority are continuing in Pretoria. One of the 11 candidates vying for the top job is current State Prosecutor Andrea Johnson. She says whoever is appointed has a mammoth task.
It is irrelevant who you appoint as the head of the NPA. And I want to say this. I talked when we found out that there might be a panel put together as the President envisages a different process to appoint the head of the NPA. I actually remarked to a colleague, where the NPA is currently, you can appoint the Pope. The place as it is now, if it is not changed, will chew the Pope out and spit him out alive.
Yes.
It is a different animal. You need to walk in there, accepting the reality of what it is. Hiding our heads in the sand is not going to change it.
And could Maluti Apufung be the most dysfunctional municipality in the country? Well, it currently owes Eskom nearly 3 billion rand and was placed under administration earlier this year. It's also one of the many municipalities drowning in debt and hopelessly failing to provide basic services. National government is now working with officials to finalize a recovery plan.
Firstly, I think the municipalities are not able to collect properly. So you have a huge amount of electricity that goes into the municipality, but they don't collect properly. Some of the situation we've got just technical wastage that goes on in the process. They lose electricity, they lose water through leaks and systems that are not well structured. Then, of course, you've got also the breakdown of infrastructures, transformers that just burst out and so on. Then you've also got the challenge of their systems inside the municipality. Systems for collection are not up to date, and we're revamping all of this. And then on top of all of that, you've also got problems of administration, maladministration, where we actually have to bring in an administrator to deal with that. We expect that the proper investigations will take place, that where there's a culpability and criminal activities, that actions will be taken.
There'll be more news at 9. I'm back at 10 with News Hour. For now, it's back to Vuyo.
Thanks, Sean. Well, Eskom has cut off electricity to municipalities that owe them billions. The power utility took this drastic step with municipalities they supply directly that collect money from consumers but often fail to pay it over. Eskom's strategies have been unsuccessful in curbing a debt that now stands at 17 billion rands. Soweto alone owes 15 billion. And its residents consistently resist any attempts to force them to pay their power bills. Now, can the installation of prepaid meters, for example, solve the non-payment problem? Well, to answer this question tonight, but also the bigger issues affecting Eskom, we speak to Ted Blom from the Energy Expert Coalition. Cleopatra Shezi will be joining us a little later on. She represents a group of community organizations that are adamant that they are not going to pay Eskom. Mr. Blom, thanks very much for coming through. But maybe the best part to start is to say, why in this day and age do we still have Eskom really being generating 95% of the economy's electricity?
Okay, so that's an historical occurrence, and that has started to change in the last 5 years with the advent of the IPPs, who now generate around 3 gigawatts, which is about 10% of the South African supply. And that will change over time. But historically, Eskom was created to supply cheap and abundant electricity to the whole of South Africa.
But has it done that?
In part it has, in part it hasn't. Part of the problem has been political pre-94, as you're all aware. However, what's probably not commonly known is that Eskom probably de-racialized prior to 1994. In fact, when I was there in '88, there was already quite a large measure of de-racialization. And one of the models I looked at that time was to make electricity free for households, all households, white, black, pink, green.
And then what happened?
The government of the day wasn't too happy about advancing free electricity at all. It's quite a radical concept, but if you do the multiplying effects through the economy of the excess spend that will happen if you make electricity free, you will recoup the money from industry. And that model is still pretty robust, other than the size of the economy has changed quite drastically in the last 25 years. But the bottom line is that Eskom at that time was more than happy to look at that model.
But in terms of your model, how exactly was it going to work? Had you done like estimates as to how much of the electricity generated will actually be free, and how much of that will then go to industry, which you argue would then have been able to make Eskom recoup all the costs?
Okay, so the split in those days, in 1988, was about 15% went to households, and the balance went to industry and commercial. And by giving the 15% away, you could make a very small, remember the price of electricity was below 5 cents a kilowatt hour in those days, you could make a very small adjustment to the price that industry would pay, and that would more than recoup the free electricity to households. The problem with household electricity is that the cost of metering it is often more than the cost of the electricity itself.
Even in this day and age?
In this day and age, with the high salaries at Eskom, it's probably still true.
But can that argument still be made in 2018? Free electricity to everyone, to all households, and then getting industry to pay?
If you asked me this question in 2008, I would have said most definitely. I'm very positive that it could work.
Why can't you say that?
What's happened in the last 10 years is because of the excessive price increases from Eskom, we've lost about 70% of our foundries, we've lost about more than 30% of our smelters, and we've probably lost about 30% of our mining capacity. So the whole nature of the economy has changed. From heavy intensive users, which would then have subsidized the households, to fewer of those because they died because of excessive tariff increases.
Let's bring in Cleopatra Shezi here. Soweto residents owe Eskom 15 billion in unpaid electricity bills, and you guys are adamant you're not paying. Why?
First of all, as the Freedom Charter states that there is a free basic service for all, and I guess we all know that as the community members we are surviving out of social grants, and if Eskom claims that we owe them, when are they going to pay the World Bank, or who is going to pay the World Bank for them? Because as far as we know, as the end users of electricity, we are not owing anyone because we were promised to have this service delivery for free. And secondly, why is Eskom want to use so much tons and tons of water in washing their cold rather than using solar panels? Because at Life Africa and other organizations, they have tested this thing of solar and it's workable and it's doable. So why can't Eskom opt for that to put us on the grid via this energy? Because we want clean energy and safe energy.
Blom, so
I'm actually
shaking your head.
Well, if the honoured guest is happy to switch the lights off at 4 o'clock in the afternoon when the sun goes down, they can put up their own solar panels. And in fact, you don't have to wait for Eskom to do that. The fact of the matter is that you cannot run a mining industry and a smelting industry and any heavy industry that relies on electricity on intermittent power. When it's available now and when a cloud comes, it's not available. When the wind blows, it's available. When the wind stops. For instance, I don't think you would feel responsible, I certainly wouldn't, pushing 50,000 mine workers underground only on a solar or renewable network, because when I need to pull them out in an emergency or at the end of the shift, I don't know if I'll have power to bring them out, and that's not responsible. So I don't think if you were in Europe or in a tertiary environment where everybody's on top of the surface and you don't have dirty smokestack industries, you could maybe consider that. But for South Africa to grow, this economy's backbone is heavy industry, and heavy industry requires heavy industrial-grade electricity. That's a fact.
Well, of course, I mean, we did invite Eskom to take part in this debate, but they were unwilling to come, and their reason was that they don't want to speak to the media a day before they are due to hold a press conference, which is tomorrow, about the coal shortages, you know, the possibility of load shedding and so on. But then, I mean, Ted, if one accepts your argument with respect to industry, what about the other part, which back in, 2008, the argument you made that actually households could get free electricity? Where does that come in, given the concerns, apart from the environmental and other concerns that she was talking about? But I'm talking now about free electricity to the poor in particular.
Okay, as I said, the cost of electricity to households is usually more expensive to read and collect than the actual value of the electricity consumed in a normal society. Since 2008, the price of electricity is increased more than fivefold, and the cost of Eskom meter readers and salaried staff has gone up I don't know how many fold. So if it was a ceteris paribus situation where you had normal circumstances, even in 2008, before all these increases came and the closure of the large parts of the economy happened, you would still be able to have free household electricity. Absolutely. I'm quite clear about that. In fact, one of the political parties asked me to do some modeling along those lines after I'd made that comment. And then I saw that my comment was no longer true, primarily because a lot of the heavy users are now no longer part of our economy.
But, I mean, No one seems keen to meet altogether your demand anyway. The question is, what then? What becomes of, what, for example, is the Soweto Crisis Committee planning to do about this? Because it doesn't look like Eskom is about to change its current model anytime soon, and it doesn't look like the politicians are listening either.
Okay, as Soweto Electricity Crisis Committee, the minute the Eskom is disconnecting the end users, we have our own team that reconnects the poor people because, well, if you can't afford a loaf of bread, then where will you get money to buy electricity? First of all, the end users, they are not educated enough on how much is kilowatt per hour or per second or whatever. Secondly, they are claiming that these green box, they are smart boxes. There is nothing smart about that because when you buy electricity for 100 Rand, when you recharge, it's not that amount of 100 Rand. The question is, if you recharge that electricity of 100 Rand and the amount is not the same as you recharge, then who is the beneficiary of the other money based on that? And most of the people, they didn't sign for these meters, but most of the people who are working for Eskom, they are insisting to enroll these boxes forcefully, so without proper education of the end users. So that is a challenge for Sowetans. Hence, there will be lots and lots of protests based on these green boxes.
Okay, let's get, we have on the line Tlaba from Dundee who has a question or comment. Tlaba, good evening.
Good evening, sir. How are you?
Very well, thanks.
No, the problem is that we are buying electricity from municipality, and it is so expensive. If you can buy electricity from Eskom directly, it will be better.
Is that a solution?
There are problems with the reselling prices of electricity, including the prepaid, insofar as the resellers' margins are not controlled by NERSA, and that's a vacuum in the law. There's a problem there, and some of the resellers, unfortunately, are really taking advantage of the poorest of the poor. In fact, my domestic lives in Hillbrow, and she's paying R4.84 a kilowatt hour flat. There's no free electricity or an inclined slope. It's just R4.84. And that's very expensive. I mean, that's more than 4 times more than what NERSA says is the allowable cost for electricity.
But as far as you know, with your institutional memory, was it envisaged that Eskom would do everything from generation to distribution? What about the role of municipalities?
Okay, so when Eskom was founded about 100 years ago as an amalgamation of smaller utilities, the idea was to conglomerate and to make it as cheap as possible. And that can work if you're a civil service organization, or notionally it should work. The problem has happened now that since 2001, Eskom has been commercialized with a profit objective, and that's when the executive salaries went through the roof. The other thing is that in the Constitution, the right to distribution or the right to generate and distribute electricity is a municipal competency. And that's why Eskom lost the REDS cases in the courts. So the municipalities have the right to do that. And in the future, I foresee them using that right more and more to do, as our honoured guest said, use renewable.
But I don't know how many sort of local government meetings I've attended where this argument has actually been made. But it would seem that nobody is listening where it matters. You have a minister responsible for local government who seems to have a completely different set of priorities, and this particular issue not being one of them, and a minister responsible for public enterprises with a completely different brief, which is commercialization, as you are saying. And these people sit in the same, cabinet meetings, but they are not finding, or there's no evidence that an effort is being made to actually find one another. Why do you think that is?
Okay, so what has transpired in the last month or so with the last NERSA hearings, where some of the charges, the spurious charges levied by Eskom were tabled by, amongst others, myself, as well as the chief from Salga, and as well as one or two of the municipalities. It came to the fore, and evidence was delivered that a lot of the Eskom billing is actually incorrect and or fictitious. And that is a big, big problem. But on the balance, the municipalities have got the designated capacity to do these things. The problem is our municipalities don't know. They don't have the institutional capacity, or they are unaware of what their rights are, and they need to consult and find somebody who can lead them through the very long path to self-efficiency on electricity generation and reticulation.
Okay, let's take another caller. Charles is in Durban. Good evening, Charles. Your question, comment?
Good evening to the viewers. I just want a question to Eskom. Why not companies like big companies that generate electricity can come onto the grid, on the Eskom grid? Why they don't allow that? And even private individual people, residents, got solar panels and whatever, they can also come onto the grid. Why Eskom don't allow that? It's been unfair because they can also generate clean electricity, and compared to the coal that they generate, they can also, maybe 5% of that can come from private users. So why not allow that? Thank you.
Is that an issue for you, Cleopatra?
It's not an issue as per se, because as the end users, as I've stated before, that we can't afford to buy a loaf of bread. When and how are we going to afford to buy electricity? And most of the saddest part is that most of the workers that work for Eskom, they are now facing retrenchments, of which the question is, if we pay, then what is this money going to do? Because as we speak, Eskom is giving certain money from our tax money. And what are they doing with that particular money if there are so many retrenchments? And even the workers that they are working in the coal mine, they are underpaid. And the biggest question is, who then are the main beneficiaries of these funds?
Ted, I mean, what the call was raising is what IPPs are supposed to be about, isn't it?
In theory, yes, but in practice, that's not the way the system is being configured. The IPPs have got very lucrative contracts with Eskom on a take-or-pay basis, indexed for 20 years at exorbitant rates. And they just, every hour generated by the IPPs just sinks Eskom further into the quagmire. So the whole configuration of the IPPs in the South African economy is wrong. The caller is correct. And
what exactly is wrong about it?
Well, firstly, the IPPs may evacuate power to Eskom whether Eskom needs it or not. So in the middle of the night, if the wind starts howling down in the Cape, Eskom is forced to buy the electricity generated, whether there's a customer for that electricity or not. The second big problem with the way the IPPs have been structured is Eskom is the supplier of last resort. So when the solar panels all die off at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, Eskom has to ramp up tremendously to take over that power generation.
So no benefits, you're saying, from the IPP setup sort of accrue to the consumer?
No, and neither to Eskom. The only beneficiaries of the IPPs is the IPP owners.
Okay, let's look at just, how much, municipalities owe Eskom. I mean, 17 billion rands owed to Eskom comes from different municipalities. The bulk of it, 15 billion rands, is owed by just Soweto. Now, poverty has been one of the reasons residents say they can't pay, as you have heard Cleopatra saying, but others say they can't choose electricity over bread. So where does this leave us? Just from the conversations you are familiar with, Ted, is there any thinking within Eskom? Is there any thinking within and among your government people about where to go beyond this point to take into account those huge monies that Eskom is owed, but also the future and security of our electricity?
Okay, so firstly, I can't speak on behalf of Eskom.
No, I mean, we tried to invite them, so
they should have been here.
You're the person who are probably, I mean, more in the know than us on what the possibilities are.
I've had discussions with the new executive of Eskom, and unequivocally, I think they'll allow me to say that they were in agreement that the price of electricity needs to revert to the pre-corruption levels. And that makes sense. Why should you and I and the lady here and Soweto pay for corrupt practices? Nobody wants to pay for that. Now, the pre-corrupt level tariff for electricity is 40 cents a kilowatt hour. And with respect, if it was 40 cents a kilowatt hour, most people would actually be able to afford electricity. So all the impediments that take it from 40 cents to 5 rand in Cape Town in high season for a kilowatt hour need to be wiped off the slate. At 40 cents a kilowatt hour and properly run, Eskom can amortize the arrears and the 400 billion rands worth of debt that it's carrying. But then you're talking about a properly run entity, not one that has its executives run petrol cards of 500,000 rand a month. I mean, that's just not feasible.
Okay, I'm sorry to have you, answer, questions we should be directing to Eskom, but as I've been saying, Eskom refusing to become part of this discussion this evening, saying that they have a media briefing tomorrow to really address the media and the nation about the challenges that they are facing. On the line, though, we have Douglas from the Val. Douglas?
Right, Vuya. Hey, your name is Vuya.
Yes.
Okay, Vuya. That woman that's sitting there by you, Cleopatra, I wonder if she knew about Alexandra. But anyway, yeah. You see, the problem is these people are working with a freedom charter, which is not a country charter. The country has its constitution, and the ANC promised the world to these people. They promised them free water, free education, free electricity, free housing, and now they want to steal the land, so that's going to be free. And who must pay for all this? The other thing Ted Blom put out was 40 cents a kilowatt, which is right. But, you know, the salaries, they have toyed, and they've damaged, and they've destroyed this whole country, this ANC government. But these people still vote for this wicked lot. That's my say.
Thank you very much, Douglas from the Val. Now, there's been an argument, which something I said right from the beginning, that perhaps prepaid offers or like solutions to the quagmire that Eskom finds itself in. Is that your view, Cleopatra, or you're saying with the experiences, with your experiences, there is no way Eskom can really address your concerns?
I think Eskom just need to communicate with the organization that made tests on solar panels. Solar panels can be the only solution for Sowetans, and prepaid is worse than the normal electricity that other communities in Soweto they are in now, because prepaid with 20 rands, then you cannot even plug a kettle. You cannot even switch on the lights from 6:30 until maybe 9, because that is like, wow.
But trying to look at it a little dispassionately, I mean, Ted, is it in Eskom's interest to actually, promote alternative sources of energy?
Look, at the end of the day, we're in a very democratic sort of environment where everybody is entitled to have a look at what they want to do. And part of that is, I think Eskom realizes it cannot be all things to all people. So, going forward, provided they survive the current hiatus financially and operationally, going forward, Eskom probably will not become the end-all and be-all for all electricity consumers. And I foresee that municipalities, with the help of societies, local civic societies, will play a larger role in enabling some affordable electricity. I don't think, as I said, if we still had the big industries, they could subsidize. We've now killed off the big industries over the last 10 years. So there's nobody to subsidize. But at least make affordable. That's the first point. I mean, if you want to get to free, let's first get to affordable electricity and then see if we can't alleviate the problem there. You know, I did a quick calculation, and the government would pay well to listen to this. If we bring electricity back to pre-corruption prices of 40 cents a kilowatt hour, my guesstimate is within 18 months, we will create more than 3 million new jobs. So what is so difficult about that?
Well, wish Telkom was here to actually...
Eskom.
Eskom. Your final thoughts, Cleo?
Okay, my final thought is that, first of all, it's within the hands of Eskom and the municipality councillors to proper engage or educate the masses on the ground on how much is a kilowatt per hour or per second or whatever. Because as we speak, you can ask whoever. Even myself, I did a research based on a prepaid meter from Piri and Shawela because it started there. Then, well, on my calculations along the lines, I thought I'm mastering it only to find out, like, it fluctuates every now and then. And, like, there is a confusion because when you buy airtime for 29 rand, that 29 rand, you'll see it's on the screen. But with this prepaid, if you recharge with 100 rand, you'll receive something like, for example, 88 rand. And where is the rest of the amount? That will be the big question. And the other thing that I can say it concerns Sowetans is that why Eskom is insisting in not listening to the end users and try to push their agenda via the councillors. And even the councillors, when we are protesting for not liking the prepaid meters, we will go directly to the councillors because they are the ones who have to stop this from the council chamber, or send the concern of the masses on the ground to Eskom. But the respond, instead they are acting otherwise based on that. So that is why they are the targeted ones. Because Eskom will come and say, okay, we will give certain jobs, and that job, it's in the period of 3 months or 6 months. After that, you will be directly affected, of which that is an insult to our brothers and sisters.
Yeah, that's where we're going to leave it. Cleopatra Shezi from the Soweto Electricity Crisis Committee, as well, of course, as Teddy Blom from the Energy Expert Coalition. Still ahead, I speak to EFF leader Julius Malema about the party's growing legal woes as it approaches next year's elections. Don't go away.